What is up, Dynasty Leaguers? Welcome back into another DLF YouTube channel video. This one's going to be a little bit fun, a little bit different as well, because I have actually went to the DLF Slack channel. I have pulled some DLF members and we created a video to make arguments for different players to be the wide receiver one overall in Dynasty right now, because this is at least my personal feeling. I feel like there's at least 8 or potentially 9 players that deserve to be in the conversation for the wide receiver one overall. That's how deep the wide receiver position is right now and stocked full with young potential upside, and also with those proven veterans that we have seen do it time and time again. So we have 9 players to run through in this video. So you're going to hear from myself and then 8 other DLF members that you may or may not have seen on this YouTube channel before. And they're all going to give you their arguments for their wide receiver one in Dynasty right now. So without further ado, let's get right into the video.
Hey, I'm Mike Havens, here to talk to you about who I think should be your first rated wide receiver in any Dynasty draft, and that player is A.J. Brown. If you take the top 32 wide receivers and rearrange them by points per target, A.J. Brown ranks 5th on that list, behind such wide receivers as Tyreek Hill, Will Fuller, Mike Evans, and Chase Claypool, and one spot just ahead of Adam Thielen. What do all these wide receivers have in common? The ability to catch in traffic, big playability, yards after the catch, and the ability to score touchdowns. Now, many of these wide receivers are good in 1 or 2 of these areas, but A.J. Brown is good at all 4. Another reason to like A.J. Brown is the fact that Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis both moved on. This leaves A.J. Brown as the most veteran pass catcher on the team, who should lead the way in targets for 2021 and beyond. Yeah, I know, Julio Jones was traded to the Titans, but I don't believe that this will be a knock to Brown's career. I think it'll limit his upside for the 2021 season, because I thought he was going to be fed targets this year in the same way that Davante Adams was fed in Green Bay. But having Julio on the team should force defenses to defend both sides of the field equally, while also still keeping focus on stopping the main aspect of that offense, which is Derrick Henry. Another reason to make Brown your first wide receiver selection is that this is Brown's 3rd year. And we all know that the 3rd year of any NFL wide receiver is the year that they start putting together their best work. Brown had 52 receptions in the first year. He had 70 receptions last year. I think it's possible, even with Julio Jones on the field, to generate 100 or more receptions in year 3. And finally, the man passing him the ball, Ryan Tannehill, has been improving each and every season he's been a Titan. His pass attempts, yards, and touchdowns have improved to the point that he's now on pace with the good quarterbacks in this league. I think he can take at least one more small step forward and utilize the best receiving core that he has definitely ever had and be not great, but still very good, which will only help A.J. Brown reach levels that he's more than capable of achieving.
This is a little short segment for you guys. I don't do a lot of those, but it's supposed to be a segment on why Justin Jefferson is the Dynasty wide receiver one. I think it's pretty simple. He balled out as a rookie. Vikings drafted him 1st round, 2nd overall, so 22nd overall, and he balled. He had 88 receptions on 125 targets for 1,400 yards and 7 touchdowns as a rookie. 1,400 yards. He finished as a wide receiver one in his rookie year. He just turns 22 years old in June. A few days from today, depending on when you're here, June 16th. 22 years old. So that means he's about 2 years younger than A.J. Brown, year and a half younger than DK Metcalf, and he's already produced a better season than either A.J. Brown or DK Metcalf has ever produced in their career. We know that Justin Jefferson was great at LSU. You know, he has the pedigree. He was great as a rookie. He doesn't have any blemishes on his track record. The one thing you could say is he plays with Kirk Cousins, but Kirk Cousins threw for 35 touchdowns last year. I don't know if I see that as a bad thing. That could be a pretty good thing, especially since Cousins doesn't run the ball. He's going to have to rely on his passing to make that Vikings offense move. So, I'm all in on Justin Jefferson. we all know that I'm an ageist. We know that I'm not going to consider players like, at this point, probably Tyreek Hill. He's 27. It's kind of on the border for me. Davante Adams is way too old. And, the other main contenders that I mentioned, Metcalf and Brown, are older, and they don't have the production in any year that Jefferson had immediately as a rookie. So I think it's pretty clear and dry. I think that now, after A.J. Brown had Julio traded to the Titans, he was the only other player I would have considered. Now I don't really see it as much of a debate. Jefferson is the clear wide receiver 1 for me. The other guys are not that close, with Brown being the closest. And yeah, I would say enjoy your, could be at this point, 5 seasons of Jefferson being this high. I think this is the next OBJ. When OBJ held the 101 wide receiver 1 in Dynasty for a couple years, I think Jefferson is starting his reign, and he has his crown right now. So yeah, I don't think there's too much to worry about with him, and you should be happy.
All I want you guys to do right now is close your eyes. Imagine we're in the lab, and we're trying to create the ideal wide receiver 1 for Dynasty. We want to hitch our wagon to this guy for the next 5 to 10 years. We want him to be big. We want him to be fast. We want him to be explosive. The all-around, true prototype wide receiver. Then when we picture a wide receiver 1 for Dynasty, that's what you get. Open your eyes now. Notice we're not in a lab. We're not creating a wide receiver. That's because we don't have to. We have DK Metcalf, a man who's 6'3", 228 pounds, and ran a 4.33 40-yard dash. The man has a 4.5-inch vertical. This man was built out of a machine. He was born through it, and he's only 23 years old. He's explosive. He's paired with Russell Wilson, who loves to throw those deep YOLO balls. And eventually, Pete Carroll is going to have to let that man cook. He's going to have to let Russell Wilson cook for a whole season, and DK Metcalf is going to be a big benefactor of that. He's going to just benefit from the extra volume in the passing game. Last year, he averaged 3.1, averaged at the target. He had a 24% target share, so he is a mega volume guy already. Also, he produced 1,303 yards, 10 touchdowns. He finished the year as the wide receiver 6 with 4 wide receiver 1 weeks and 4 wide receiver 2 weeks. So even when the volume in the offense started to decrease, DK Metcalf was still valuable. When he was being drafted, many people was nagging his route tree. They were down on his 3-cone, his ability to change directions. But this guy wins with explosiveness, speed, after the catch ability, and he is developing. He is getting better. The upside with him is through the roof. He's already valued super high in Dynasty, and he's in a great situation to be fueled for fantasy football production. DK Metcalf, long-term wide receiver 1, book it.
Hello, everybody. I'm Nathan Powell and Powell FF, and now I'm going to make my case for my wide receiver 1, CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is currently a wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys from the University of Oklahoma. He was an absolute wrecking ball in college. He's entering his sophomore year, so we're going to look a bit at his past, at his college data before we enter the NFL. So in 3 college seasons, he had 58 catches for 1,097 yards and 10.67 touchdowns per season. So in 3 seasons, he's averaging nearly 60 catches, over 1,000 yards, and over 10 touchdowns per season in his 3 college seasons at Oklahoma. So he enters the NFL. He is listed at 6'2", 198 pounds. So good NFL size for the modern game. And he, to no people's surprise, goes as a first-round pick. He's 17th overall pick, going to one of the best offenses in the NFL with Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup. Some might say that was a crowded room. That, it's a crowded offense, lots of mouths to feed. Lamb is superseding that by being one of the best players in that offense, but also just showing this offense is so good that it can support all these weapons. And CeeDee Lamb is another example of that. When Dak Prescott was healthy, CeeDee Lamb was a machine. 17.1 PPR points per game with Dak Prescott, according to DLF Player Splits app. Make sure to check that out. And on a per game basis, when you project that to a 16-game schedule, that's 273.9 PPR point pace. So he did not have Dak for the last 11 games of the season. So without Dak, he did finish as wide receiver 22 overall. But that doesn't show what we have what he did with Dak, and that is more what his production is going to be over the next several years with Dak Prescott. The reason why I loved Lamb as wide receiver 1 is because of his skill, his youth, how good his offense is, and Dak Prescott is now signed long term. He has that safety net of he knows who his quarterback is going to be and is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, in one of the best offenses in the NFL. So that's only going to increase his ability as far as his 74 catches for 935 as a rookie with 5 touchdowns. That number is going to go up. The Cowboys scored fewer touchdowns in 2020 than they would have rather if they had Dak. So with Dak on a 16-game pace, I expect an increase in touchdowns from the 5, and I expect an increase in production. So looking at more of the first 5 games with Lamb, where that's 17.1 PPR points per game, going to see more of that in 2021 and beyond, making CeeDee Lamb a great long-term option as the wide receiver 1.
What is up, Dynasty leaders? I'm here today to give you my argument for why Tyreek Hill is the Dynasty wide receiver 1 overall right now. And yes, I know that might sound a little bit crazy. He's like 5 or even 6 years older than some of the wide receivers that we've already talked about. But Tyreek Hill has proven he's done it year after year, and he's one of the best fantasy football wide receivers in the game right now. Tyreek Hill has solidified himself as one of the premier weapons in this game, as a favorite target, at least with him and Travis Kelce being the favorite targets for the best quarterback in the NFL right now, Patrick Mahomes, and probably for the next decade or even more so. So that situation is not going to change. They just lost Sammy Watkins. This is basically going to be a repeat in 2021 of what happened last year in 2020 with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce leading the way for all of the Chiefs pass catchers and targets, receptions, and touchdowns. Speaking of that production, in 2020 last year, Tyreek Hill had 15 receiving touchdowns and an additional 2 through the ground. So you can see that Andy Reid likes to, mix it up in terms of how he gets the ball into Tyreek Hill's hands, giving him at least 135 targets or an additional 10 to 15 rush attempts. So this is a very dynamic player in a dynamic system with a coach and play caller who knows how to utilize him in different ways to give him mismatches and really take advantage of his speed. So let's talk about that production, because like I said, Tyreek Hill is fantastic. He has been one of the best wide receivers in fantasy football over the last 4 years, was the wide receiver 2 last year in 2020, right behind Davante Adams. 2019 was a little rough. He had some injuries and stuff, only played 12 games, but was still averaging over 15.5 fantasy points per game, which would have been 10th in fantasy points per game in 2019. So basically wide receiver 1 production again in 2019 when he played. 2018 was the wide receiver 3, was fantastic again. And 2017, he was the wide receiver 9. So 3 whole seasons of wide receiver 1 finishing production, and then another 2019 season with wide receiver 1 production when he was on the field. Those 3 seasons of top 12 fantasy production at the wide receiver position is the same as or bested by only a handful of other players in the league: Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones, Adam Thielen, and Michael Thomas. And Tyreek Hill is the youngest of that entire bunch by 1, 2, or even, more than 3 years. So Tyreek Hill definitely deserves to be in this discussion as one of the best wide receivers in the league right now, one of the best wide receivers in fantasy football. He's done it year after year. And when you're talking about the best wide receivers for fantasy football in 2021 and 2022, and even maybe 2023, you're probably having Tyreek Hill at the top of that list every single year as a top 3 or top 5 option, if not potentially the wide receiver 1 overall in redraft in those years. So if he's going to be that great for fantasy football in redraft, why is he not there for Dynasty? So that is my argument for why Tyreek Hill should be your wide receiver 1 in Dynasty right now.
I am Dynasty Outhouse, and I have a problem with people overthinking who the Dynasty wide receiver 1 should be. It's Davante Adams. Stop getting cute about it. I get it. Oh no, he's 28 years old. When does the prime start for wide receivers again? 27 to 29. So he's in the middle of his prime for at least this year and next year, statistically speaking. That's not me. I don't know what I'm talking about. Numbers do. Talk to the numbers, guys. Davante Adams is awesome. Davante Adams is on a team that has nothing else. They have Davante Adams and they have running backs, which means who are they going to throw the ball to? Alan Lazard? Sure. No. Amari Rodgers? Cute. No, not going to happen. And I'm going to put it out there. I don't care if it's Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball or not. Davante Adams is good. Good players earn targets. Good players catch their targets. Good players do things with those targets. DeAndre Hopkins, we freaked out because he went to the Cardinals. Don't matter. He's awesome. It doesn't matter even if it's Jordan Love. If anything, it's fine. That's better than a rookie QB because they've practiced together. They've thrown the ball back and forth a little bit. They've caught the ball a little bit. So seriously, Davante Adams has been awesome the past few years. Davante Adams, if anything, will catch a ton of touchdowns because there's no one else to do that. Josiah DeGuara, Robert Tonyan, sure, okay. It's Davante Adams. Seriously, stop getting cute. I get that Justin Jefferson is awesome and he's like 16 years old. I get that CeeDee Lamb is great and he's like 17 years old. DK Metcalf, come on, I'm a Seahawks fan. It's just not going to be a thing. I'm sorry, he shouldn't be your wide receiver one. Davante Adams has done it before, will do it again, and will continue to keep doing it. Stop overthinking it. Stop being so afraid of trade value when you want to score points and win. To me, like, that's really what you're saying the wide receiver one is right now, is when you're talking about right now. And that's what we're doing. If we're talking trade value, yeah, Adams is not the number one, but we're not. We're talking about what ADP should be. We're talking about what scoring is going to be. We're talking about the player you want on your team. And for me, that is easily Davante Adams.
What is up, everybody? It's Calvin and Hobby with a very simple question for you. And that's, what do you think happens when you take one of the most talented wide receivers in the NFL and then you pair him with one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL, and then that wide receiver leads the league in targets? You get the Dynasty wide receiver one. You get Stefon Diggs. Think about Dynasty fantasy football for a second. What are we looking for? We're looking for talent. Yeah, check. We're looking for opportunity. Check. And we're looking at things in a 3-year window. And I want you to think about this with Stefon Diggs. I want you to think about this with every wide receiver. If we're going to fast forward to the next 3 years, and we're going to say from right now until 3 years from this date, Stefon Diggs will be 30. Oh, no. But hey, from now and then, who do you think is most likely to have more targets than him? Anybody? You taking an amount of money that means a lot to you and putting it down on anybody else other than Stefon Diggs? I'm not. He's in an offense that's going to throw the ball a lot. He's going to earn those targets. The other reason why I'm not scared about his age is because Stefon Diggs doesn't win because he goes up and gets the ball like Calvin Johnson or even like DK Metcalf or somebody like that. That's not the kind of wide receiver he is. He's a technician. He creates separation. He earns those targets, not just because he's in a high volume passing attack. He is a great wide receiver. He gets one of the best air yards that he can because of the offense that he's in. The completed air yards, number 2 in the NFL. Last year, in his very first year in this system, most receptions in the NFL, most receiving yards in the NFL, most targets. This is somebody who is going to continue to crush it. You can go ahead and roll the dice on somebody else that's not going to have the opportunity that he has, but I wouldn't. Why? Why would you take anybody else right now when you can have the things that you want? 3-year window. Yeah, he's got that. Talent, absolutely. Opportunity. That is what we need in Dynasty. Don't overthink it. Don't take somebody else. Don't get cute. Stefon Diggs is your guy.
Hey, DLF. It is one half of Mannequin Chill, Charles Chill, FFB, Dynasty and Chill, and I am here to talk about Ja'Marr Chase. And you all might think I'm crazy, but Ja'Marr Chase as wide receiver 1 in Dynasty? Are you crazy? He hasn't done it yet. He hasn't produced yet. How would I consider Ja'Marr Chase as wide receiver 1 in Dynasty? Well, hear me out. I had to pick somebody. I think there's probably a lot of other obvious picks for the wide receiver 1. But here's what I'm going to talk about with Ja'Marr Chase. So let's just start by looking at where he started. So Jamar Chase is already the wide receiver 8 in Dynasty, according to the May ADP on DLF. Second, the prospect profile and the production profile for Jamar Chase is second to none. It's unrivaled by almost anybody that's currently in the NFL. There's a couple other guys that are close, but for all intents and purposes, he has the best profile we've seen come into the NFL in a long time. He will also play his entire rookie year at 21. Anyone that's listened to Dynasty and Chill, I have talked about, based on at least the last 5 years of historical ADP trends, how important that is. It is more important than almost anything else in terms of value. People value these guys that blow up at 21, or at least play the majority of their rookie seasons at 21. A couple other guys hit 22 during their rookie year. But the idea is they're 21 when they take their first snap. They're 21 when they play their first game. All the guys that hit last year, Jefferson, Higgins, Lamb, all fit that criteria. You can go back. Metcalf, AJ Brown, they fit that criteria at least to start the 2019 season. Before that, DJ Moore. Before that, Juju Smith-Schuster, all the way back to 2014, where you had Mike Evans and you had Keenan Allen. There's just been a ton of guys that have fit that criteria, and it's not necessarily that their production is going to go through the roof after this year. You know, that's one of the things about Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb. Like, if you can turn around and trade them for Jamar Chase plus a first, you know, that type of deal, do it. I was willing to do that this year, and I'm still willing to do it now. I don't think the market fits that. But I think the idea is the market goes crazy on these guys that hit as a rookie. So let's look at Jamar Chase as a rookie. Keep in mind, he's starting as wide receiver 8. That's higher than any receiver has ever started. So he's already starting about halfway there, right? He's not starting in the mid-teens like the guys last year. You know, CeeDee Lamb was like wide receiver 14 through 17, somewhere in that range. Chase is already top 8. Now you can say, well, no, he's starting too high. We've jumped the shark. But here's the thing. He's that much closer to number 1. The other thing is he's tied to a high volume situation. So if we're going to keep some of these benchmarks the same, and based on my research, it's been a minimum of 160 PPR points, but the gold standard is 200 plus PPR points. Now, if we adjust that up to 17 games, we're probably looking at somewhere like 210, 215. But that's the benchmark. If he hits that as a rookie, where he starts, he's already going to be in the conversation with every one of the other guys that's up there inside the top 4 or 5. So basically, he would do exactly what Jefferson and Lamb did. He would exceed probably what Metcalf and AJ Brown did as rookies, and he would be younger and probably tied to a situation that people are going to see more favorable than probably the Vikings, probably Seattle if Russell Wilson leaves, maybe Tennessee with Julio there and with Tannehill there. We don't know what the situation looks like after that. And I don't think it will take much for him to pass Tyreek Hill, Davante Adams, or Stefon Diggs. I'm just assuming that with a 200 PPR point season or better, Jamar Chase jumps those guys no matter what they do, because that's just how dynasty owners value receivers. So that's the path. It is not that he is better than all of these guys. It is not that he's produced or is going to produce better than, say, Justin Jefferson as a rookie or any of the other guys over the last couple years. The idea is wide receiver 1 in value. So clearly the idea isn't to want to pay the wide receiver 1 price for Jamar Chase. But right now I'm making the argument that I don't think it's that big of a leap for him to hit these minimum thresholds. Essentially 200 PPR points, every other box is checked. So he's about 90% of the way there. And all it's going to take is a really good rookie season for him to jump into the same range as Brown, Jefferson, Lamb, and Metcalf. So it's not that far off. And here's the thing. If I had to make a case for the wide receiver 1 besides any of those guys, it would be difficult, but I'm not sure I can pick out the single most valuable one of those names. I think you probably see people valuing all of those guys the same. So I think it's just a big tier of the wide receiver 1s. It's those 4, Brown, Jefferson, Metcalf, and Lamb. pick your preference. And I think arguably Chase might be in the best situation of all of them, other than maybe Lamb, when it's all said and done. So that's Jamar Chase, wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. Would I take him over all those guys straight up? No, because you don't have to. But I think it's a really, really safe bet that he's going to be in the mix with those guys 1 year from now. Appreciate all the listeners. Love DLF. Keep the ideas coming for Manic and Chill. I know I can speak for my co-host, @Shane is the worst. That definitely we love doing the show. We love interacting and just being ourselves. So appreciate y'all. And Jamar Chase, wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. Lock it down. Get your shares now, because a year from now, you're going to have to be paying way up to get him. So get him now. The price is only going to go up. Later, DLF.
Hey everyone, I'm meant to be making a case for who is going to be the wide receiver 1 in fantasy scoring or PPR scoring in 2021. And this is an idea from Addison Hayes from the DLF YouTube channel, and this is my segment of it, in which I'm going to argue what chance does Calvin Ridley have to be the wide receiver 1. Now, there's a list of top 12 players, obviously, and I chose Calvin Ridley before the Julio Jones trade. So, just saying, I was here before it was cool. But also, the Julio Jones trade is actually my main concern with Calvin Ridley's potential to be the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. So we're going to have to talk about that a little bit. But to start off with, making my case for Calvin Ridley as a wide receiver 1 in 2021, that's going to get annoying, let me list some names. Through the first 3 years of their career, who do you think has had a better career? Calvin Ridley, AJ Brown, Julio Jones, or DJ Moore? You probably guessed it, since this is a video about Calvin Ridley. Yeah, it's Calvin Ridley. Through the first 3 years of their career, he earned a higher opportunity and was better on that opportunity of all 4 of those wide receivers. He had 1.5 yards per team attempt, 19% opportunity score, 9.5 targets per game. All of those are higher than all 4 of those other wide receivers. He also averaged 1.8 yards per snap, which means when he's on the field, he's getting more yards for the team than any of those other 4 wide receivers, who I think are more often valued more highly than him. I really think some people don't think Calvin Ridley has that potential to be the top wide receiver next year. And he really does. This also shows that someone like DJ Moore, who hasn't yet broken into the top 12, even though Calvin Ridley was, and one of the best cases for Calvin Ridley being the wide receiver 1, by the way, is he's already been a top 5 wide receiver. Like, none of the other wide receivers I just mentioned have done that through the first 3 years of the career. Something like 90% of wide receivers who have top 12 seasons do it by year 3, and Calvin Ridley hit top 5. DJ Moore hasn't yet got there. It doesn't mean he can't get there, but it means Calvin Ridley has a stronger case to have higher scoring moving forward, despite both of them actually having more opportunity and being more efficient on that opportunity than AJ Brown or Julio Jones. And the fact that Julio Jones and AJ Brown don't show up well in yards per team attempt, or as well, and yards per team, yards per snap or opportunity score tells you something about how useful these numbers are. They give us some idea of what a player has done through the first 3 years of their career, but it is not the be-all and end-all of who is and what is good. It's just good. It's just nice to know that Calvin Ridley has done the best of some of the best wide receivers we have seen enter the league through the first 3 years of their career, and I think that's somewhat missed when we value them and think of them as potential wide receiver 1s in Dynasty next year. Now, what I want to talk to you about to get this video under 20 minutes, because Addison wanted it to be 3 minutes long and we just skipped right past that deadline, is that this year 3 25% target share breakup year was when Julio Jones wasn't on the field. And I think that's how some people are going to misread that Julio Jones trade. The fact is that Calvin Ridley's blow-up last year happened while Julio Jones was on the field. It's not consecutively, it's not he took over the role after Julio Jones was not there last year. It happened concurrently. It was at the same time. Week 1, 2020 season, they were both top 12 wide receivers. Calvin Ridley was wide receiver 2, Julio Jones was wide receiver 8. Following on to week 6, when they were again both on the field, Calvin Ridley was wide receiver 10, Julio Jones was wide receiver 2. Week 7, Calvin Ridley was wide receiver 15, Julio Jones was wide receiver 18. When they were both on the field and healthy and playing really well, Calvin Ridley's breakout or blow-up year had already happened. This wasn't something that required Julio Jones being gone. It was something that is in some way probably aided by it, which is why his numbers likely show up as more efficient through the first 3 years than someone like A.J. Brown or Julio Jones himself, who didn't have someone else as dominant on the other side of the field, although Julio Jones had Roddy White for a while, and to help him out. So this has already happened. This is the new normal. Calvin Ridley is a top 12 wide receiver, and he did it while Julio Jones was sucking up 20% of the team's targets. Now, the problem in 2021 is that Julio Jones was sucking up 20% of the targets, and that likely helped Calvin Ridley and everyone else on the team. So what I've done for the 2021 projections is that I've ranked his efficiency back. He was getting a touchdown for every 152 yards last year, and I've moved that up because they're going to have less scoring opportunities without Julio Jones. They just are. I've also pulled his receiving efficiency back and his catch efficiency back because he's going to be the main wide receiver with less help from Julio Jones, and so I think he's going to be less efficient. I think his volume has already been established last year, so I don't think he's going to get the wide receiver 1 role now Julio Jones is gone. I think they were 1A and 1Bing it already, so he's going to get 26% of the targets, and even pulling his efficiency back to a human level, he was still a top 12 wide receiver with Julio Jones there. With Julio Jones gone, he's going to be less efficient, he's still going to get the volume, and he's already been a top 5 wide receiver last year. So, yes, he definitely could be the wide receiver 1 in 2021, which did get annoying. And I think that potential is probably underrated of those top 12 wide receivers in Dynasty right now, because we think of him as connected to Julio Jones, when really this happened concurrently. This happened at the same time. Calvin Ridley already made it happen. So, yeah, that's my case for Calvin Ridley as wide receiver 1 next season. There we go, found a way around it. Let me know what you think.
So that is it. That is our arguments for the 9 wide receivers that we believe deserve to be in the wide receiver 1 overall discussion in Dynasty Fantasy Football right now. So it is entirely up to you as to which argument you believe the most, which player you believe in the most, and ultimately comes down to what you decide and believe for your wide receiver and for how you like to build out your Dynasty roster. So leave a like, drop a comment down below if you agree or disagree with any of the takes or opinions that we have had. If you have a different wide receiver in mind, I definitely would like to hear if you believe that there's another wide receiver that we are missing from this list, or if you just definitely agree with any of these wide receivers and one of these guys is for sure your wide receiver 1. I'd love to hear all that down in the comment section below. So thank you all so much for watching. We'll catch y'all later.